The Tuesday, September 15th, 2020 school committee meeting. As always, these meetings are audio and video recorded. We call this meeting to order. We will start with introductions to my left.
Natalie Barr, student representative.
Robert Mullen.
Good evening, Mike Moran.
Good evening, Mark Branco, Assistant Superintendent.
Hi, Mike Flanagan, Superintendent.
Ryan McMahon.
Becky Stanton.
Good evening, Julie Guastucci.
Anthony Tenerella.
Joe Messina, Business Administrator.
Sharon Fairbanks.
Rise to the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I will seek a motion to approve the September 8th, 2020 Superintendent's Evaluation Subcommittee minutes, September 8th, 2020 School Committee minutes, and the September 8th, 2020 Executive Session minutes. The Executive Session minutes are not to be released at this time.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 6-0-0. Correspondence.
Mr. Chair, we have a lot of items under correspondence tonight that I want to draw your attention to. The first one is a letter that I wrote to Michael Ryan Roach and Michelle Riley of the Board of Health, and they actually shared this letter last night at their Board of Health meeting. I just want to make the committee aware that on Thursday, September 10th, Michael Ryan Roach and Michelle Riley, myself, and Mr. Robson, from President of the TTA, we toured all three of our schools 2 days before students were to arrive to ensure that the schools were as safe as possible. We looked for recommendations from Mr. Roach and Ms. Riley. Some great feedback, some great takeaways that we took away. We're adding additional hand sanitizers in common spaces and hallways. But it was a great opportunity for us to really showcase the work that went into the schools this summer by Mr. Cimentelli and his staff. So we were very pleased with that tour. This is just an overview of what we did that day. Happy to answer any questions about that. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the agenda. The second piece of correspondence is a joint letter from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees as well as the MASS, Mass Association of School Superintendents. Essentially, it's a letter that was sent out to every editor in the state that talks about the complexity of school reopening. As you know, there's been some difficult negotiations in other communities, so I think that was in response to that. The third piece of correspondence is an acknowledgement by the TTA executive officers, the Tyngsborough Teacher Association executive officers, to this committee, thanking you for your hard work and dedication to the Tyngsborough Public Schools. So that was on behalf of the TTA executive officers. The fourth piece of correspondence is also from the TTA, addressed to Chair McMahon, and it's a request to bargain. We will talk about that a little bit later when we get into executive session. And the final piece of correspondence we received just yesterday from Commissioner Riley. It's Commissioner Riley's weekly update. It's important. This is important information. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later. And eventually, this committee will need to take some type of action on this in terms of what our final determination would be for a committee that's going to make a decision. But the key takeaway from this letter is, as we look at state metrics, one of the things that needs to be considered is, you know that Tyngsborough is in the yellow right now as a community. Just because if Tyngsborough were to dip into the red, it doesn't necessarily mean that the white flag goes up and you are to shut schools and go remote. So basically what the commissioner is saying, his recommendation is that communities look at 3 weeks of consistent color code before you make a decision. Additionally, this also says that if Tyngsborough were to drop into the red for 3 consecutive weeks, we would need to look at other contextual data before a decision is made. So we'll talk a little bit more about that down the road, because I know that Mr. Robson, Mr. Lenzik, Chair McMahon, and Michelle Riley are also another committee that we're going to talk a little about. So that came out yesterday from Commissioner Riley. So that is all I have for correspondence at this time.
Thank you. Visitors, comments, and questions? I see none. Share the success. Natalie?
The first 2 days of in-person learning at THS went well for the Lakeview cohort, while the Winslow cohort also reported a successful remote start to their school year. Students were happy to have a 5-minute mask break outside during every period. THS students also enjoyed being allowed to have the option of eating outside while socially distancing from one another. All in all, THS students seem to be very happy to be back in the building and truly appreciate all the work the school committee, Dr. Flanagan, Mr. Ogden, Ms. Trainer, Ms. Palumbo, and all the other administrators and teachers have done to assure our safe return for in-person learning 2 days a week. At TMS, they had a great day with the students and are glad to be back with the teachers. The technology worked very well, the lunches went very well, and the mask breaks were welcomed by all students and teachers. They were able to keep the windows open throughout their school day. They love the variety of masks they see and may even do a contest for the masks as the year goes on. Mr. Paul would like to thank the technology department for all of their hard work to make this model work as well as it has. They also would like to thank the maintenance and custodial departments for their work in preparing the building. He would also like to thank the central office for allowing all of them to establish their protocols for what will work for each building. They have been a great support and offered clear expectations for them to keep everyone safe while creating a vibrant learning environment as they can at this time. They are glad to be back and are excited for a new school year. And at TES, they welcome back 746 students virtually and in person. Their first day was a success. Their students haven't been in school for 185 days, and most kindergartners have never entered the doors of TES, but you wouldn't know that. The students' smiles, excitement, and a resiliency were remarkable to see, according to Principal Kavanaugh. As they expected, they encountered some technology challenges, but are working closely with the technology department in order to troubleshoot these as they arise. They, too, are thrilled to be back and can't wait for an amazing school year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome job, Natalie.
Subcommittee update. We'll discuss the superintendent evaluation more detailed in item 9B. Personnel, request for maternity leave. Kate Trainer is due date November 5th, 2020. Good luck, Mrs. Trainer. Unfinished business. School committee update.
Mr. Chair, we'll go through our regular updates. We talk about reopening, and I think, now that we are open, it doesn't make sense to call it a reopening update anymore, so it's just the school committee update. So I think this is in response to a lot of the dialogue that we've had as a committee and answer some of the questions of some of the data that you were looking for, so we'll just jump right in. I think this first slide is probably more pertinent now than ever as we received some guidance from the commissioner in terms of context and data. I think that was kind of the question that was in everyone's mind. If the Tyngsborough drops into the red category, what happens? Well, nothing immediately. We need to have conversations about it and discussions about it and really go deeper than one metric to understand what it looks like and what the impact could potentially be on our community. You may have seen playing out in local communities lately, high school parties are happening, and some districts are making decisions to shut down high schools. That doesn't necessarily mean elementaries and middle schools need to close if that's the case. So it's important for us to recognize what's going on, where the clusters are, where the trends are, and really understand that to the best of our capacity as we think about making decisions going forward. Next slide. Again, this is just the standard slide that I'm going to put in every week. This is, or every school committee meeting, that we are in the yellow at this point. So this slide represents a question that was asked of me last week. The number of students that are in hybrid learning model and the number of students in a remote learning model. This accounts for all 1,616 students in our district. I'm going to give the committee a minute to look at this data. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have about this. I think one of the things that really jumped off the page for us was the grade 9. I think that's the first time in a lot of years we've gone under 100 students in a class. It was a small class to begin with. We knew the number was going to be low, but I think some students have potentially opted for private or parochial school that are going 5 days a week. So in that transition year, that's logical. You're not likely to see a senior jump to a new school, but you may see a student transition from 8th grade to 9th grade to go to a new school that's going to go 5 days a week. So I think that number reflects that component. I also think, Mark, if you go to the next slide, and this is all in your drive for you. This also answers some of the questions that the committee may have. One of the things that DESE is looking at right now are enrollment projections versus enrollment actuals. And one of the reasons they're looking at those numbers are for FY22 budget planning in terms of Chapter 70 and what that's going to look like. So as we look at these numbers, you'll see that we did decrease by 2.4% based on our projection from last year. Look at our kindergarten enrollment. You see we projected originally 119 students. So that 119, the basis of that is off of last year's pre-K membership plus census information. And I will say that the census information can be spotty. So 119 is a best guess. But to see 17 students less than that actually enrolled this year, that probably speaks to parents looking for 5-day-a-week childcare. So students could be at Knowledge Beginnings or Little Angels or a place like that offers 5-day, full-day kindergarten. So that number's down a little bit. And then if you look at the number of our students that have gone to private school, parochial school, you'll see 21, 22. And homeschool, last year we had 14 students homeschooling. This year we had 31 projected to homeschool. So 74 out-of-district students this year. So the number has dropped by about 40 kids from our projected enrollment. Not horrible. When DESE compiles all this information and looks at local communities, we'll get a better sense of what that data point is. Right now, this is just Tyngsborough in isolation. Let's see where we stack up against other communities to know how much we need to react and respond to this. But this is just good information for you to have as we start to think about, as Joe starts to think about FY22. We're not there yet as a committee. So again, these are just this is more information that you were looking for last week. Let's go to the next slide. Can I answer any questions too? Just jump in and stop me along the way. One of the things I want to do is provide an update to the school committee as to where we are with our memorandum agreement with the TTA. As you know, we had 6 different components to that agreement, and some had multiple factions within them. So in terms of the first thing we talked about, language that was specific to the draft reopening plan. One of the things we talked about was classroom setup. We've achieved that. We talked about having 4 months worth of PPE on hand. We have that. Our nurses have it. It's all available. We talked about establishing a COVID review team. That COVID review team is made up of Chair McMahon, Mr. Wenzik, Mr. Robson, and Michelle Riley. You're going to hear more about that later. We also talked about doing an air quality assessment. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. That's also in the update. That report did come back. And we also talked about a Board of Health walkthrough. That is the letter I alluded to earlier that Mr. Robson participated in last week. So we've checked the box on item 1. Item 2, changing dynamics. That's just a placeholder in there for us as a community. In the event something shifts one way or the other, we can come together and look at where we are. Item 3, school calendar. I just want to be perfectly clear with everyone at home. The school committee has determined that we will get a hybrid model for the first trimester only. This school committee needs to make a determination again, either the end of October or early November, as to what trimester 2 will look like. I think it probably my fault. There may be some confusion out there because of how the calendar is color-coded and went out. It reflects or represents a hybrid schedule all year, but in lieu of anything else, we had to do that. So that's out there for the community, but this committee will make another decision. Evaluation, we'll begin talking about that with the TTA next week. We haven't really looked at that too deeply yet. We're still in day 2. So we did get some guidance from DESE about that, so we'll have conversations with the union. Item 5 that we talked about, tomorrow will be the first day. So TTA members who could not find childcare for their kids that are age K through 8 can bring their students into school with them. They can sit in the back of the class and participate in the remote learning in the back of the class, as long as they don't disrupt the teacher who's leading our kids in instruction. And finally is the item 6, the last thing that we really need to check the box on is a school committee walkthrough. And right now I have 3 volunteers, Jeff, Ryan, and Becky, to come this Friday at 8 a.m. to do a walkthrough. I'll throw it up to any other committee member. If at any point you want to walk through the schools and see what it looks like, just reach out to me and we can coordinate that. But we said we would do this before the end of September. So we're going to set aside that this Friday, 8 o'clock. So in terms of the MOA and the update, we've done what we needed to do. We're going to have more conversation about it as we go. And I think the more collaborative we are in our approach, the more communicative we are with the association on our approach, the better off we're all going to be. So I just wanted to keep you up to speed with that. So here are no questions. I'll move to the next slide. So I know there's discussion about the Trane air quality assessment, and I want to walk through the timeline of how this transpired. So in and around July 29th, the school committee reached a tentative agreement with the association negotiation team regarding some HVAC language that they wanted added to the contract. So we looked at putting that additional language into the contract, and specifically it says that the district will audit all HVAC systems and assess the air quality in each building. So we looked at bringing somebody on board. I asked Mr. Cementelli to reach out to a third-party contractor. We went with Trane. We're familiar with their work. And we met with them just 3 or 4 days after our initial TA with the union. We came in and Trane presented to us an indoor quality assessment and what it would look like. And it was pretty boilerplate. It was the same assessment they were doing in just about every district around us. And I think, as you know, given the concern with air quality in the schools, there's been a significant amount of work being done studying and assessing air quality. So Trane gave us that assessment of what they would do. We thought that was good. We wanted to see what the numbers were behind that proposal. So 3 days later, they came back. Mr. Cementelli and I met with them again, and they presented a scope of work. And that scope of work, it actually included work to be done at the Lakeview School. We did not include that in this. Valley Collaborative can be responsible for any air quality assessment there, not Tyngsborough Public Schools. So we looked at the scope of work for the high school, middle school, and the elementary school, $38,360. We approved that work on August 6th in that meeting. And as I said, we were hopeful that they would be out right away. Again, everyone's looking for this. They couldn't get out until August 24th. So from August 24th to September 4th, the training technician was here on campus assessing all the air systems and air quality of all 3 schools. That was concluded on September 4th. By September 10th, 6 days later, they compiled the report and sent it to us. We received that at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. On September 11th, Monday, that Friday morning, I forwarded the communication or the report on to the chair, and I met with the TTA immediately because I knew that was something that the TTA was eager to get their hands on. So we had that meeting on Friday. We worked really hard that weekend with the TTA to come to some understandings and really talk through what that report looked like. And I think one of the things that we noticed, and we're going to talk a little bit deeper about the report, but one of the things we noticed was the recommendations said that they wanted HEPA air purifiers in every exterior classroom at the middle school. And that wasn't something that we had certainly thought was going to be a recommendation. We had proactively purchased 40 HEPA air purifiers, recognizing that our interior classrooms, both at the high school and middle school, may need air purification and air movement. But we didn't expect the exterior rooms at the middle school to need that as well. So we got on the phone that week on Saturday and Sunday and reached out to some neighboring districts to see if they had extra air purifiers that we could borrow in the meantime. We also ordered some on Friday the 11th. We ordered 30 additional that are coming in this Friday. And we were able to secure additional air purifiers from 3 local districts so that we had them in place, Mr. Cementelli and myself, on Sunday morning, so that we could open school and have air purification in every classroom at the middle school. So there's a lot of work went into behind the scenes to get that done, and we're just appreciative of that. So if we go to the next slide, Mark. These were the 30,000-foot recommendations about our air quality systems. So the Tyngsborough Elementary School, built in 2002, overall the system's in good condition. They did have a good number of recommendations for specific sections of the elementary school. And basically what they were asking us to do is not worry about energy savings. Take off our drives, stop the limit settings, and open it up, and open the system up. So, Mr. Cementelli, if you want to jump in at any point. So we're looking at basically pulling drives off or resetting drives and open up the systems to get more air into the school. So why don't you jump in here?
Okay, the drives basically limit the function of the units, the HVAC units we have, both in the upper section of the buildings and on the rooftops. And by removing these drives or bypassing them, you will allow the systems to run wide open and bring in more volume of air, more turnovers per hour, basically. And that's pretty much the same for all the schools. In a nutshell, from 30,000 feet, that would go true with every one of the schools.
Yes, so I think one of the things that you're going to see in the report, if you really dive into the report, you're going to see some technical language, which is beyond me, but it really talks about different systems, different sections of the school. It says bypass the drive, open it up, and let's get as much air into the school as we possibly can. So we can do that at the elementary school. The middle school, they want us to change the filters more frequently in the heat event. Classroom, we're on top of that. We had historically been changing them 2 or 3 times a year. We could be up to 5 or 6 times a year at this point right now. Again, the exterior wall classrooms need the portable HEPA air purifiers. Interior classrooms need them. We're good there at this point with some borrowed units. And at the high school, again, remove all energy-saving measures, open it up, get as much air in as you can, and increase the air take, as well as HEPA air purifiers in the interior classrooms and open the windows for the exterior classrooms. I will say, Don, maybe you could talk about the work that went into repairing the windows at the middle school and all the screens at both the middle school and high school to make those functional.
Sure.
I think in my 20 years, I don't think every window's worked at TMS, so.
Well, my staff said to me they've never seen every one of the windows open. So Dr. Flanagan said, what is the reality of us getting all these windows fixed by the time the teachers and students come back? I said, we can do it. We're not going to be able to get the exact parts, but we can make them open, we can lock them in place, and we can put screens in. I know we can make that happen. My staff made that happen.
Yeah, they're not, they're MacGyvering them a little bit, which is okay. They're completely safe, but they also put screens throughout the high school, which we haven't had in years as well. So Dominic and his crew did a fantastic job there. So before we move to...
Well, before you move on to the next slide, I just have a question here. So someone in the audience participating at home, not participating but watching or whatever, may have a question about the removing the energy savings, but I think the solar panels in the school can help offset some of those costs because we're saving money there. So if we're opening up these HVAC vents to consume more electricity, it might be a net. So we're not necessarily going to be paying more money out of our budget for electricity because we're actually saving money on the school roof solar panels.
It's a great point you bring up, and I'm gonna look to Mr. Messina here in terms of savings from solar panels last year. Ballpark.
For half a year, we're at about $40,000 to $50,000 for a half year.
I don't anticipate the air conditioning's costing that, or the system's costing that much to run for 6 months.
No,
or however
no,
long.
not at all.
Exactly. So so it's not
Not
that
at all.
we're opening them up and prohibiting the cost savings. We already have cost savings built into it, so we may spend a little bit more money. But at the end of the day, we're not increasing our costs dramatically.
I would caution the committee that the FY21 budget does reflect the solar panels
Sure.
savings. So
Sure.
we have recognized the savings in your budget, but by opening the systems, I don't anticipate a large spike in electricity.
Thank you.
By doing that.
And if I may, the HEPA filters and the additional filters to be changed, are those all covered under the CARES Act as well?
Yes, thank you. So the HEPA air purifiers that we bought are covered under the CARES Act on the town side of money.
Perfect, thank you.
So, Mr. Messina, we've expended all our CVRF funds at this point.
They're all allocated to various other projects. So yeah, the town cares is the last pot of money that we're utilizing at this point.
Thank you.
So I will make this report available on our website tomorrow. I'll make sure it's out there, the full report. It's in your drive tonight for your review. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot myself, Dom, or Joe, any questions that you may have about that. Dom, while you're here, if we could just go to the next slide, please. I just want to let Dominic provide a little bit of an update as Director of Facilities of the work that went into making sure we're ready for this year.
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Flanagan. The list you see up there is just a small part of what we've done this summer. If there's anything up there that you see that you want me to expand on, I certainly can and will. We walked all the school buildings in detail with the Tyngsborough Fire Department and the building inspector. Their recommendations were implemented and were worked. Height of the sanitizers, everything. configurations of every classroom and making sure we have enough space for the students to move through and everything. Myself and my team took recommendations from the committee work that we performed, my colleagues performed, and I. All the principals and all the nurses, we took every bit of that information and we implemented and got everything done. And I'm so proud of my staff and the entire Tyngsborough, all the administrators and the work that went in. Everything was amazing.
I'll just say that, Donna's team's done a great job, and I think incredible job since March. Cleaning the schools, preparing the schools. Our schools have never looked this good. Given the time out, they're more painting and fixing, and every filter's changed. But I think one of the things that we see right now is we see a proactive approach to maintaining our schools by our custodians that we generally haven't seen in the past. It's been really reactive. But now you'll see custodians throughout the day periodically walking through halls, cleaning high-touch surface areas, handrails, push bars on doors. They are as vigilant as ever, and it's something that we should thank or commend them for. It's a good thing to see. It really is a good thing to see. They care about our schools. They put a lot of time into it, so we're appreciative of all their efforts. So that being said, we'll go to the next slide. So we have Mrs. Lowenzik here as well tonight, and I think at this time, we mentioned the COVID status review team earlier, so I think it's important to talk about what that means in a little bit more depth. So Sam, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good evening. As you know, one of the steps we've agreed to take is to form a COVID status review team, as Dr. Flanagan has already announced. As part of that team, we have representation from the school committee, Board of Health, the Teachers Association, school administration, and our head nurse for Tyngsborough. This representative group has been meeting for the past couple of weeks and will continue to meet weekly to review and discuss the Massachusetts DPH COVID-19 dashboard that provides communities with the count and rate of confirmed positive cases, or people, and the tests performed in Massachusetts by city or town. The state data link can also be found, and that's something we'll have on the website tomorrow, as well as the report that Dr. Flanagan just spoke to. I wanted to make sure we had some discussion about it this evening before presenting it online, but that certainly will be available on the website. Within the review team, you can stay right there. The review team meets each Thursday afternoon, and the state is releasing their updated information to review local COVID data and trends on that weekly basis. So the information comes out by the state, usually on a Wednesday late evening, sometimes late afternoon, but by Thursday morning. So our meetings have really been arranged in order to meet that data as soon a time frame as possible when it comes out. So we meet Thursday at 2:30 when school lets out, and then we talk about those different data and trend items. It's important to note that the dashboard includes a weekly report that compares a 2-week period of data, and you'll see that as you delve deeper into that state data link. Moving forward, the data discussed at our weekly meetings will be shared as part of a report to review at each of your school committee meetings, and the report will reflect a weekly update to include the total tests administered in Tyngsborough, the total positive cases, again people, and a 14-day window of total positive new cases, as well as total active cases. And what I'd like to do now is give you a bit of a representation of what those graphs look like so that you can become familiar with them. And again, this will be the information that continually gets updated and shared to the school committee each week. So Mark, if you don't mind. This first graph represents the total tests administered in Tyngsborough as of Wednesday last week, September 9th, where you can see there's 3,567 tests since the start of COVID testing in March. We can expect that this number will continue to increase as test centers and tests are more readily available. So I want to point that out so that as we continue to talk about this information and we see some slight increases, that again, with more test centers available, with more testing that's coming about, we would expect that information and those numbers to increase slightly. If you don't mind hitting that next slide. This graph represents the total positive cases as of, again, Wednesday, September 9th, and here in Tyngsborough for a total of 120 positive cases. So I'll just give you a minute there to take a look.
Is there data that shows, positive test cases, but then people recovering?
So we'll get there.
Okay.
Yep, great question.
Sometimes it's
Yep.
like, oh my God.
Absolutely. Nope, it felt similar. So this is just representing the 120 positive cases within Tyngsborough. And to note, there's 121,396 within Massachusetts at this point. Similar to the last slide, again, it's important to take into account that this number is representative of more testing being available than at the end of July, where you can see there on the graph, when the total positive case count at that time was 105. Again, we would expect that this number may increase, similar to the total tests due to increase in testing availability. You can go to that next slide, Mark. This slide provides data on Tyngsborough's positive case count during the 14-day window. And the graph represents the number of new cases in Tyngsborough, again, using that September 9th of last Wednesday date, where there were 8 new cases at that particular time. And Mr. Moran, to your point, when we're looking at those 8 new cases, that again captures that 2-week period of time on September 9th. And again, as of that Wednesday date, Tyngsborough has 10 total active cases out of the 120 positive cases. So just to address your question.
Thank you.
So let me just give you all a minute to just kind of take in that information, and I'm happy to answer any question there if you have any. It's pretty self-explanatory, and I think the reason the committee really wanted to make sure we were giving these kind of snapshots was, if you look to the dashboard, it's overwhelming. There is a lot of information, but we want to make sure that we're teasing out the most important information for Tyngsborough right now, and we'll continue to keep giving these updates as we go on.
I would just add here that as we continue with this particular slide right here, we will keep the number of active cases current and historical, just so we can see that as well. We didn't necessarily track back all the active cases that were happening in August. We just thought this would be the first one, and we'll just keep that there as a good data point of reference. The other thing I think that's important is, we go back to the very first slide in this presentation, context and data. Context matters. What do these 8 cases look like? What do these 10 cases look like? Is it a senior center? Is it a cluster of a high school team? That's going to inform and drive what we do. So I go back to the commissioner's metric. That's one metric, that color-coded category. That's just one piece of information. We need to fully understand what it means in Tyngsborough and what do these cases look like and what are the potential impact on any of our schools before we decide on making any kind of adjustment to our learning model. So
I do think that's a huge consideration. When we talk about Tyngsborough, we're talking about 12,000 people. Yep. In consideration of the dashboard that looks at over 100,000 cases or people. So we need to, as Dr. Flanagan has been pointing out, talk about context and really be looking at all of the data. Although the weekly color-coded health matrix is a great data point, it's one data point, and we can expect that we're going to trend in and out of color zones, and we need to make sure that we have all this information afforded to us before decisions are made at a next level in regard to school closures or cohorts or any of those groups that may need to be isolated. It's also important to note that when we're looking at this data week to week, you're going to see jumps. Mm-hmm. And it's jumping because we are so small. So try not to, take that as anything more than it is based on the data. We used people purposefully here instead of using percentages so that it was really giving a more accurate count for Tyngsborough without giving a percentage that would really misrepresent the information that we're trying to display within the graphs themselves.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one more piece of clarifying information here?
Sure.
So my understanding is that the COVID status review team is going to update this and send this out weekly to the school committee.
Correct.
And we will present it publicly at every school committee meeting.
Correct.
So you're going to get it in your email weekly, but the public won't be seeing this until
Yep, on Thursday at 2:30, we'll have the conversation based on the Wednesday prior's information, and then our head nurse and myself will make sure the information is dispensed to the school committee as a whole. And I think that pretty much clears it on my end. We will continue to closely monitor the data to ensure that we have a clear understanding of the impact the virus is having on the community as a whole. And certainly you will have that information afforded to you and be able to see that as well.
If I may.
Of course.
The 10 active cases currently in Tyngsborough, I know we can't give, obviously, names and that
Correct.
type of stuff. Is there a way that the health department could provide us with possibly the ages of those individuals? Or a breakdown of...
Demographic.
So I will say that Michelle Riley on the Board of Health is in constant communication with Carrie Owen, and if there's something that the Tyngsborough Public Schools need to know, we are notified. We are obligated as a district to contact DESE in the event any of our students test positive, so that number is recorded at the state level as well. So without giving away any identifying information, we are made aware if it impacts the public schools.
Probably get like an age group, an age range,
Exactly.
There's 3
0
people
to
that are
19, I
50
think,
to
is the
60
age
that
group.
have.
Correct. And right now, if we were looking within the state average of Massachusetts, 37 is the age average. For Tyngsborough right now, within the past 2 weeks, again, using that Wednesday data point, it's actually 47. So, we are keeping a close eye on that, but to your point, being very careful based on confidentiality with our small numbers, that would be a breach.
So an average age would help us feel more comfortable, that is to say no students are aged 47. If we have a student who's 47, we got problems.
The average, yeah.
So,
The
yeah,
average
so-
range right now with that 2-week period. And again, if we do, and when we do have students test positive, then all of the protocols are in place in order to, get them isolated, quarantined, and then back in our schools as soon as possible in a remote learning environment until that time.
We've also been supplied templates by DESE as well as Merrimack Valley Superintendent Association. We're collaborating on this as well. So, there are protocols we're gonna follow. I can't promise that people are gonna be pleased with the amount of information they're gonna receive, but they're gonna receive what we are allowed to give, and that's it. And we're gonna follow everything to the letter of the recommendations and guidelines. So.
And if I may follow up on that, and another reason for me asking that question is we also have several families who have some children in Tyngsborough Public Schools, some children at the Greater Lowell Voc, some children at other schools. And by understanding the ages of the individuals that are currently active, we know that those school districts aren't affected and possibly affecting one of our children. So that's kind of my thought process there.
Any other questions on the graphs or any of the information that will be just discussed within the committee itself?
Do you get any information on hospitalizations? Like when they say active, does that mean hospitalizations? Or does that
No,
mean-
it doesn't. So hospitalizations would be another category. Active means still symptomatic.
Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't mean hospitalizations, and that would be a different category entirely, along with anything else that becomes more serious after that fact.
Okay.
But the Board of Health is tracking that information very, very closely. Ours is really on our community as a whole within the school system. But, I think the dashboard also really outlines a lot of that more specific information if you do have a particular interest.
Good question. And then behind the data, are we also looking at contact tracing as far
Yes,
as?
100%, and that's a great point. We didn't talk about contact tracing, but certainly if and when a student or a staff member does test positive, then we already have those protocols in place. The Board of Health will work very closely with us, and they will really navigate what that looks like for us, and then we'll make decisions in regard to, depending on the cohort group and the number of students in which, may have been exposed at that particular time, what we may need to do, to Dr. Flanagan's point earlier, because, there might be more of an outbreak at the high school doesn't mean it's an automatic middle school, elementary shutdown. It may just be an isolation for certain cohort groups at that particular time in whichever building.
So if we're good there, is everyone good there?
Yes? Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Now we're going to talk about exciting stuff that happened the past 2 days.
Definitely.
So I get the pleasure to talk about the first couple of days. We just got through day 2. I can't tell you, I don't know who said 185 days. Is that what the count was before? That's unbelievable, isn't it? That is a long period of time to go without seeing kids in classrooms. So, you know, we weren't running into buildings like we traditionally do. We were very careful coming back to school. We got to see the arrival and dismissal process right out of the gate. Kudos to our administrative staff and to all of our teachers and staff members at all 3 buildings. It was like clockwork watching kids come in and watching the protocols get met, and especially at the elementary school, guiding the young ones right into the correct doors, following the color-coded lines, and they came in like they were pros, like they'd been doing it forever. So it was right. We were more confused than they were, I think, at the elementary school. So we got to watch that a little bit. Past couple of days, we've observed the hallways and the stairwell traffic patterns, all of the outdoor classrooms, the mask breaks, the lunches, all the stuff that happens in and around the actual educational opportunities that are afforded to the students. And all of that stuff was fascinating to see how months and months of planning and teamwork actually played out authentically over the past 2 days. And I could tell you that I think all the administrative teams from central office got in and out of the schools the past couple of days, and it was fascinating to watch it all happen in real time. But really, when you get back into the classroom, it was really fascinating to see that academic magic start to happen in this concurrent model where we have kids in the classrooms and remotely at the same time. So a couple of the pictures, and I'll put this, I think this is already in the drive, right?
It is.
So you could get a better shot of these pictures in the drive. I just wanted to send some snapshots around there where you can see we had so many students reporting anecdotally in hallways, having conversations with us. They were so happy to be back. They were heavily engaged with teachers and their classmates in person and remotely, which was fascinating to watch. I was in a first grade classroom, and I was helping the teacher triage the Google Meet. And this little first grader says to me, you know, it's not set up right. It's not set up right. So I lean over and I help him navigate the Google Meet. And he's trying to look at the tile screen. And I said, there you go. He wanted to see everybody. It's not set up right. It's not set up right. So I fixed it 2 or 3 more times. And finally I said, what's wrong with it? And he said, I can't see Johnny. Well, Johnny's his best friend, and his friend's on the other side. So we kept clicking, if you've ever used Zoom or Meet or anything else, until you get the tiles to set up right so I could see you and center my screen. And the kid, you know, smiles under the mask. He says, now it's right. And that was it. Right? So he just needed to know his friend was in his classroom. In his classroom. Not physically in that room, but in his classroom with him. And I tell that story because it was like so real coming out of a first grader's mouth. It was pretty cool to see it happen. So if you look at some of these pictures, you'll see Mr. Stanley at the front of his room. You'll see a kindergarten classroom looking like little executives at their laptops doing all of their work. You'll see that we have the second and third graders. We have Miss Rowe in there, Miss Petrosky-Lewis, Mr. Tucker. I've put a couple of these shots in there just so you can see what it looks like from the teacher perspective, so you can see the 2 screens, you can see the kids on the screen as well as the kids in person. So I tried to get you a couple of views from what it's like from the teacher perspective, where they can see both the in-person and the remote at the same time. And there's another close-up of what that looks like from the teacher perspective again. So all kinds of great activities in the first couple days designed to learn the tech, build positive classroom climate, a little bit of academic review, a lot of social emotional acclimation, and just getting the adults and the students in the buildings set up for our new norm, so to speak, to see what this looks like. Super proud of the students, super proud of the staff. Just fascinating to walk through these classrooms and see it come to life, and see kids and adults triaging problems and becoming real-life engineers and problem solvers on the spot to help each other get through the day. And just after day 2, so many positive stories, and the glitches that will continue to occur a little bit. We'll continue to knock those barriers down as quickly as we can and move the teaching and learning forward. But really proud of everybody's hard work. Pretty cool. And those of you coming through the classrooms on Friday, it's really interesting to watch it all happen.
Anybody have any questions for Dr. Branco?
I will say another learning on the fly thing today. I got a story from the Mrs. Kavanaugh at the end of the day today that she was walking the halls after the fire drill, doing the building sweep to make sure everyone was out, and heard all kinds of laughter and chatter in one room, and immediately ran into the room, and it was all the kids who were remote who didn't know screaming, "Hi, Mrs. Kavanaugh!" So that was pretty cool. So that was pretty funny. So we'll learn. We'll figure it out. So it's really been great to get through the classroom and see the kids. So we'll go to the last slide. This is the last slide. Just a reminder of upcoming school committee meetings. We have a town meeting on Saturday, September 26th, 9 a.m. right here on Pierce Field. As you know, Derek Piper was supposed to be here presenting tonight. He's actually at the elementary school, still working on some network settings. So we bumped Derek to the next meeting, and that is the upcoming meeting scheduled for the school committee. And that is all we have for a school committee update. And just go to the last slide, Mark. For any parent at home, if you have questions about reopening, if you have any issues or concerns, please send us an email so we can be as responsive as possible. And that's it for item 8 on the school committee agenda, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Item 9, new business. Homeschool applications received. So we have Braden Mandra Biscornet, student in grade 3. Christopher and Heather Black, students in grades 1, 2, 3, 6, 8, 10, and 12. Emily Klassen and Christopher Briggs, student in grade 4. Caitlin Courtney, student in grade 3. Jamie and Amanda Graham, students in grades 1 and 3. Corliss and Angelina Lambert, student in grade 1. Chris and Michelle McNally, students in grades 4, 7, and 10. Joe and Stacy Tupin, students in grades 1, 2, 4, and 7. David and Therese Ware, students in grades 7 and 8. Bear with me. Paul and Jill Mercer, students in grades 2, 8, and 10. Lloyd and Brenda Mosman, student in grade 12. And those are our home students.
I commend the parents who have 7 at home. I'm just saying. That's a lot of work.
Superintendent goals, 2020, 2021.
Mr. Chair, I met with the superintendent committee for the past 2 subcommittee meetings before the school committee meetings, and I've had my draft goals in the drive for the past 2 meetings. Just want to provide a quick overview. As you know, per DESE recommendation, I'm required to provide at least 2 and up to 4 goals for each academic year. This year, the goals focus on, goal 1 is leading the Tyngsborough Public Schools through the pandemic. As you can see, I think that's pretty broad based. So what I did was look at specific categories within that to really focus and make some actionable items, as well as establish some benchmarks. So the 4 topics that we'll be looking at, and the benchmarks are all there for your review, are first and foremost the health and wellness of our kids, making sure that we're doing everything we can to provide a safe learning environment. Secondly, academic expectations. Message received, we understand that last spring wasn't what any of us wanted academically for our kids. So this concurrent learning model that we have in place right now is meant to address that. We want this to be as real as possible, regardless of whether the student is in person or at home learning. So academic expectations. Number 3 is social emotional expectations. Taking care of our kids, and I think, if nothing else, yesterday was a great opportunity for us to recognize the importance of them getting back together and being around each other and seeing each other. It was awesome to drive by the high school lunch and see them all sitting 6 feet apart on the baseball field having lunch together, just laughing and being around some of their friends they haven't seen in a long time. Likewise, I was able to see that at the elementary school recess. They don't need a basketball or football. They're just going to run around and have a blast. They're going to make up their own games and they're going to figure it out. And it was incredible to watch. And then the middle school kids having lunch outside on the basketball court behind the gym. It was really nice to see our kids come together and really they long for that, and it was wonderful to see. So social emotional well-being of our kids is certainly important. And finally, the fiscal responsibility. As we look at all the grant funding that we're getting, we realize it goes quickly. To create schools and environments that are safe, that meet guidelines, it's costly. But we're being as financially as responsible as we can in that approach. And as we prepare for FY22 and we start thinking about impact on Chapter 70 and revenues and things like that, we have some goals up there for fiscal responsibility as well. So I think those are the 4 key areas that we need to understand. It's not typical rolling the budget over this year. It's going to be very different. We're spending money now that we didn't necessarily know we would need to spend, and we have to plan for that as we move forward. So those are my goals in terms of leading the schools through the pandemic. My second goal, obviously, is we need to keep moving forward with the Middle School Building Association and make sure that we keep this middle school project on track. Meeting regularly with Left Field, who's been an incredible partner for us as our OPM, and just making sure that the school building committee has the information they need and that we're making the community aware of where we are throughout that process. So those are my 2 big goals for this year. Obviously, goal 1 has some subsections in there. But the Superintendent Eval Subcommittee did vote on these goals tonight, so I don't know if you want to provide an overview of that.
Sure. So the Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee consists of Julie, Becky, myself. We discussed these goals last week by email through the week and again tonight. And as of this evening, we voted unanimously to approve the goals as presented. So we're comfortable with the goals that Dr. Flanagan gave us. Does anybody have any questions? So if not, I'll seek a motion to approve Dr. Flanagan's goals as presented tonight.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 7-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
9C, indoor air quality assessment. That was already discussed earlier in the evening in the school committee update. So we'll move on to finance. Mr. Messina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Presented 11 bill warrants to the committee tonight. I do have them all back signed. In your drive is the list of warrant numbers, accounts, and amounts. For signing of payroll, nothing tonight. We'll do catch up on those at your next meeting. Also in your drive is the final FY 2020 school committee budget for your review. You have some 280 lines of various descriptions within your budget. Ups and downs, of course, when you have literally thousands of moving parts with staff and students. But if you go down to the bottom number, it is a balanced budget. You spent exactly what was given to you by the town. Auditors, a number of years ago, recommended that the school committee vote on the final spending, just so you've recognized that you have line item autonomy within your budget, and you're just making a motion that the spending has been approved as presented.
I will seek a motion to approve the final fiscal year 2020 spending as indicated.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 7-0-0. Thank you, Mr. Messina. Promoting you.
I had one last finance item for the committee. We did send out our free and reduced letters this afternoon. Karen Chasey, our free and reduced lunch coordinator, sent them out. And there was some language about the USDA seamless summer option within that language. And that seamless summer option program, USDA is going to continue that into the fall, hopefully as late as December 31st, if the funding holds out. It caught the state a little bit by surprise that they made this announcement. So at a meeting we had with the state on last Thursday, they did tell us to go ahead and start serving lunches at no cost to all students as of Monday, and they would work through the application and the paperwork with us as to what that means, switching from the National School Lunch Program to the seamless summer option, and then back when the funding runs out. We are going to craft some notifications to the parents. I believe Dr. Branco's got that on his to-do list.
Coming tomorrow.
Where we can also open up the remote lunch option a second time. So if there are any additional families, understanding now that there'll be no cost for these lunches, if they want to sign up for those. And anything served lunch-wise at the schools is at no cost to the students. Any a la carte items would still cost and be charged to the students' accounts.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
School committee discussion. We'll start with Natalie.
I'm so excited to be back in school, and I'd like to thank everyone for all the hard work they've done for us to be able to do so.
Yeah, welcome back, everyone. Thank you all very much for all your hard work. I know this has been a challenge for everyone, and it was fantastic seeing all through the summer, and now with the schools open, seeing everyone working together to make this happen. I'm just so proud of our entire staff for all the work that they've put in, including the people here in this room. Greatly appreciate it. I've heard nothing but wonderful things so far. And, here's to a wonderful year.
Just want to kind of continue on that theme. Just thank you to everybody who involved in getting the schools back in and getting the students back in. It's just the amount of work that went into it was incredible, and it certainly it's paid off. Just to kind of on a quick personal note, my middle son on the first day of school was absolutely petrified to get on the bus, go to school. He was kicking and screaming, did not want to go. He came back so happy that he was back with his friends. He loved his class. And he was the first one up this morning and right out the door. So I think that speaks volumes to be able to turn his opinion that quickly. And for everyone knows that's virtually impossible to do with them. So I think we're off to a great start, and fingers crossed, we'll just keep on trucking.
That's great. Yeah, welcome back to the students, and I think that it's very important, Dr. Flanagan, to talk about the social and emotional well-being of students. I think it's very important that students are back in the school system, interacting with the teachers, interacting with their friends. I think for the human condition, it's important to be with people. I think as adults, we know what isolation tends to lead to. And I know with children especially, they're growing and they really need that interaction. So I think it's good. I encourage it. I also, on the flip side, encourage, those parents, based on some of the social media discussion over the weekend that was kind of nonsense. If you're really nervous about your child coming to school with the 8 or 10 cases that have been listed in the town overall, and the average age group is 47, keep your kids home and stop the nonsense on the social media. It's really ridiculous, especially as a school committee member where I didn't even have the report for the HVAC stuff. It's nonsense that somebody in the community would have that report, make comments on social media, cause a stir. It's irrelevant. Let the educators, let the administrators, let the professionals do their jobs and stop making nonsense. We're focused on the children, we're focused on safety, and we are focused on positive outcomes. We are all working together to get this done, so I'm very excited as a school. First day, second day, everything is going nicely. Thank you.
I'm good.
I'm all set, thank you.
I'd just like to echo everyone else's comments to our teachers and Mr. Robson. Thank you for being so cooperative and working with the administration and the school committee and getting this done as well. To your staff, done a great job. You can see it throughout the buildings. The buildings are, I think, the cleanest I've ever seen them. It looks great. Everybody works so hard in getting this done. To the members of this committee who have put in hours and hours and hours of time attending meetings, thank you to all of you. And of course to Dr. Flanagan, Dr. Branco, Mr. Messina, thank you all for, and Ms. Fairbanks down there. No one ever talks about Ms. Fairbanks, but all the work that she does, typing away down there and getting this done. It's great to the bus companies, our food service vendors, everybody who played a role. Our kids are back in school, and not full-time yet, but we're working on that. And just thank everyone. That's it.
Great.
So if I could add one more thing. Something we used to say a lot is our kids are back in school. So in the morning, watch out for the bus stops. In the afternoons, it's going to start getting dark.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for the kids in the streets.
Yep.
That's it. Thank you.
You sure?
Okay. If I think of something, I'll interrupt you.
Thanks for warning me. I'm just going to say thank you to everybody. I know how incredibly hard it's been, and I really appreciate everyone, the whole Tyngsborough community coming together to get our kids back, at least part-time, and that's really important. So thank you.
I'll echo a lot of what was said. Thanks a lot to the teachers and so many others that we're not specifically calling out. One thing I do want to call out is that Dr. Flanagan puts in a lot of time. We all know that. We see him here late hours. He's also at other places late hours, like working with the Merrimack Valley Superintendents Association, which is a lot of the local superintendents. And it's because of that partnership that we were able to get these extra air purifiers. So thanks to the local schools for helping us out, and Dr. Flanagan, thanks for putting in that extra effort. It's very appreciated.
So I appreciate the tribute to Don Ciampa there about the kids at the bus stop. For those who don't know, that's a Don Ciampa thing every time. So that was great. We're off to a great start. We're not off to a perfect start, but I would also argue we've never had a perfect school day. I ask for people to be flexible, patient, and understanding as we work through this technology. We're all doing the very best we can, and these teachers are faced with a whole new experience. So they're doing a great job, and we're going to continue to support them, and they're going to continue to do a great job, and they're going to get better at it every day. Most importantly, they're making our kids smile every single day, and they're making connections with kids. That's the most important thing that we can provide these kids right now, and the academic expectations are coming. So thank you to everyone involved, and we just appreciate the support of the school committee. And again, we're going to continue to look at that context and data as we move forward, and we'll make the best decisions we can for this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Likewise, I echo a lot of the same thoughts. Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Sarah, for coming tonight. Thank you, Mr. Robson, for being here. Got a ton of work went into opening schools this summer. It's crazy that's finally here. My kids are in the Winslow cohort. So their experience has been remote, so I get to compare remote in March versus remote now, and what a difference. My son especially, Jeff, Tommy, in the spring, my son could not wait to get off the computer, play his Xbox. I mean, it was an absolute nightmare. Yesterday morning, he was up early, sitting at his desk. He was all set up. He had his favorite shirt on, and he was ready to go. And at the end of the day, I said, "Oh, how'd it go?" He goes, "Oh, it was awesome." He goes, "But it was really good because I was actually excited this time." I said, "Oh, all right, that's good." And so I checked with him today. He's still excited. So 2 days into remote learning, both kids are happy. I think it's going really well. And just what a dramatic improvement over the spring. So once again, thank you to everybody involved. There is a need for executive session tonight to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. We will return from executive session only to adjourn the regular session meeting. This action requires a roll call vote. I need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
In favor?
In favor. In favor?
In favor.
In favor.
In favor.
Have a good night.